You're listening to the Get.Out.N.Drive.Podcast with John CustomCarNerd Meyer and Jason OldeCarrGuy Carr. We'll be bringing you gearheads everything you never wanted to know about cars and why they should be on the road and not in your garage. Are you ready to get out and drive?
Well, welcome back to another episode of Get.Out.N.Drive Podcast. Every one of our podcasts is customized to you, the listener. We find out what you like, and what you want to hear, and we ramble on and we talk about it. The same thing I do with cars. Everything is tailored to what I like, or if I've got somebody building me a car, I can build something what somebody else likes. I love custom cars. I can restore an original car, but it's somebody else's vision. My whole life is experiencing what it feels like to create something, artistic talent, customizing something and getting somebody else to see in real life what I have in my head. Does that happen to you, Jason?
Well, I'm not a car builder, so no, it doesn't happen to me, but I am the type of guy who has a vision that may not necessarily have the ability to put it together. But I can only imagine that being in your position for the 30 years that you were doing what you were doing, and building these cars for people and this and that, I can't imagine it not invoking the creative juices in your own mind to take, oh, well, when we did that car, I liked that little bit that we did. Maybe I'll incorporate it into mine someday. And then when we did this on that vehicle, I like that would work here as well. Like, it just must get the creative juices so flowing that when it comes time to do something for yourself, you're like, I've got all these ideas. How do I make it happen? And where is that inspiration coming from initially? And I think that's a little bit about what we're talking about here today, is that somebody's inspiration has turned into a legacy. And we're bringing this legacy to you guys a little bit today, in case you didn't know who or what the heck we're talking about. And I'll admit, I'm the first person to admit, I'm a little bit out of my wheelhouse here today, talking about this specific build and some of the earlier builds and this and that coming from, John, who are we talking about today?
Well, I think in the custom car world, there are many, many people, and we could talk for hours and hours and hours and fill a coffee table book. But I think one of the most prolific that's out there is the Barris brothers.
George and Sam Barris.
George and Sam Barris. Without getting too political, George was very much a promotions guy. Sam was the artistic talent. George had talent. He could do it. He could do a lot of things. He can create things. He could draw things. And he made it happen. He made a lot of things happen. He shook a lot of hands and talked to a lot of people. But I think, in my opinion, the steam train behind the Barris brothers was Sam. And I got to see the very last car that Sam worked on. It recently got finished and is owned by Tim McMahon, same person that owns the Rod and Custom Dream truck now. He owns the 1957 Chevrolet El Capitola. It is a bordering on show rod-ish custom. That car put an end to George's career of working on cars, because if anyone has known or seen the car, and I'm sure we can throw up some photos and things of details of the car, every panel, you've seen panel paint, right, Jason, that they put lines on the car and they have a big panel and it kind of accents your way. That's a big word. It kind of accentuates the body panels. Well, George did one better on this car. He took every panel of the car where they were going to painted another color, and he sunk it down a quarter of an inch. It's physically 3D and you can feel it. And they paint stripes and things in the car. And when you look at the car, the body's actually stepped down. Hammer and dolly and torch and everything. Everything that I've read said that this car was the end of it for George. He wanted to go out with, or for Sam, I'm sorry. He wanted to go out with a bang. And
Well,
El
and that's
Capitola is it.
and that's just one of many. If you're in this industry and you know the history of how custom cars kind of came to be, like you can't talk about the history without talking about the Barris brothers. Yes, there are plenty of other influencers in that category. Um, but some of you may only know the name Barris from a few very special, very popular cars and vehicles. I don't want to say cars because they're actually art pieces. But most of you guys know that the original Batmobile came to be through the Barris brothers. You all know the Munster Mobile. You all know the Monkey Mobile. There's several others out there that became famous because of TV, but those started as a brainchild somewhere within the Barris garage, and most notably Sam with his artistic ability and things that come out of there. But like we're going deeper than the Batmobile.
Oh
We're
yeah.
going deeper than Herman Munster's Munstermobile. We're talking unsung cars, Barris creations that have been long forgotten and maybe even not known about until recently when they reappear. So, John, something big has come up, um, most notably in recent weeks here, of a car that has been found hiding in storage for how many years? 30, 40 years?
I would probably say 40, 50 years or more. This car recently came up and it just absolutely popped onto the scene, like literally, not to date this podcast, but here in the beginning of June 2024. Nobody saw it coming, and there's randomly an ad in Hemmings, which always to me triggers that someone loved a car and they kept it away and they never did do anything with it, because this car ended up staying in its first iteration, uh, where um, where the Barris studio did customizing on this Buick, and it never evolved. And whoever had it loved it so much. And I don't know this for sure, but usually is the case. A person dies and their family doesn't have any idea what to do with this car. I wish I knew a little bit more background about it. I can only read what was on the Hemmings ad. But this car is Bill and Bob Glazer's 1953 Oldsmobile convertible. And I don't have it all memorized yet, so thank you, Custom Rama. So I'm currently on your site and looking at all of your things. So shout out to Custom Rama for having a lot of information on this 53 Olds convertible. Um, it was a very little known car. It was finished, painted, it was on the show circuit and all that stuff. But it doesn't say here at all when the last time the car was out. I just see show car pictures of the car, and it looks exactly like it did today in what looks to me like the early 60s. So that puts the car exactly right like that. And there's no price. I have heard from a little bird that the car has been sold and it will be in good hands. Um, and I've not been told who bought it. But again, the person who has his finger on the pulse of custom cars, our good friend Kevin Anderson, who is the promoter for Custom Car Revival in Indianapolis, which I went to just the past few weeks ago. Beautiful custom cars there and everything. So when I saw this, the first thing I did was I called Kevin because he's got his finger on the pulse of all of that. So he very nicely told me that he believes that the car has been sold and it's in good hands. So I'm going to do a little bit more digging um, about the car, and you never know what's out there. This car popped up from nowhere, and because it didn't have a whole lot of popularity when it was fresh, not very many people knew what it was now.
Well, and to some people, they're going to take a look at this car and they're simply going to look at it and say, okay, what's the big deal? It's a 53 Oldsmobile.
Hmm.
And some will look at it and say, well, whoever did that ruined it. But those who know that in some people's eyes, okay, because it's not original, it's ruined. Whatever. To each his own. Those of us who can appreciate the hours and the craftsmanship that went into these cars can look at that and might think, you know what, that might not be my cup of tea, but I certainly appreciate the effort and the time and the energy that this thing went through to go from blah rolling off the showroom floor to she got a little bit of sparkle in her, boys.
Oh yeah.
Like
I'm
we're not talking flat enamel lead-based paint here. We're talking like tri quad coat
it's
candy.
it's candy.
Like, like this is to me, it's a beautiful car.
Hmm.
And you know what the most beautiful picture in that article is, John?
Which one?
The one in the garage covered in about 40 years worth of dust.
Oh yeah. Yes. Yes. And it has the car show banner behind it.
Yep.
Everything has been kept exactly as it was during its heyday. And it's just amazing. And it's a subtle Barris custom, a little bit of shaving, little nose and deck, change some trim on the sides,
Adding
uh,
some headlights.
adding some headlights. It does have quad headlights in it. It is just a wonderful, wonderful car. Not overdone. Because what happens in a lot of custom cars, because of indoor car shows and points and things like that, everybody wants to change their car for next year so they get more points. So if my car had two headlights last year, they change it to canted four headlights this year, and then they stick upside down Packard taillights on it, and they start gluing and sticking and chunking and cutting and sectioning for no reason other than to get show car points. That's why some of the cars that have been lost to time are some of the best cars because you get to see them in their first iteration and they haven't evolved for no reason at all other than just evolution.
And a lot of people look at these cars and they say, well, why would they do that? Well, what John just said is exactly why they do it. It's they want to show off their creativity as many places on a specific vehicle as they can. So rather than just Frenching headlights, let's add a couple when it never used to be that way, right? Rather than having one body side molding or one body line going down the car, let's add another one somewhere or two or three, like you talked about earlier in the 3D paint.
Mm-hmm.
So, every car, just because it rolls off the assembly line floor one way, doesn't mean that it has to fit everyone's taste. And even custom cars, they're called custom for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because somebody liked what they had in their mind, they put it to paper, and they made it work. This is a tangible piece of artwork that somebody somewhere likely will clean it up and they'll get it rolling again under its own power, and or heck, they might completely change the car to their liking. which
Anything's possible.
anything's possible, but for the
It
right
is a
person.
custom car, and sometimes they go through different owners,
Yep,
and that car changes hands, and it changes its way of being presented.
that's right. And if I know you, John, I know that you would do everything in your power to bring this car to bring this car back to its customized position the way that it was when they
Oh, very
finished this.
much so. It would erase all this vehicle's history if anybody were to restore this car back to factory stock. Um, Hopefully it doesn't get changed because it would show its history, and it would be a complete time warp. A lot of old customs and things have been popping up lately on social media. One of the biggest cars that I thought I would never ever see again, and a lot of people are hunting it down. A lot of people were looking for the car, trying to figure out what happened to it. It is Larry Watson's '57 Cadillac Eldorado Brougham. Absolutely, absolutely beautiful car. Everyone thought it was gone. Nobody had an idea where it was.
And this car wasn't even hidden away, I don't believe, was it?
No, as far as I know, it wasn't hidden away. It wasn't undercover. It wasn't in storage or anything. Um, I spoke to Ethan Adams, which on Instagram he is that old car guy.
Not this old car guy.
Not that old car guy, that old car guy. So the irony is just incredible here. But he and his buddy found Larry Watson's Cadillac in the weeds behind some place with a whole bunch of other cars as a car hoard, and they found it on Facebook Marketplace. They had no idea what it was, not a lick of idea what it was. Not that younger kids don't know what the custom cars are, but they saw the car and no one else did. And they're like, oh, hey, that's kind of a cool car and it's near where we're at. So we're going to go look at it. Well, they start pulling the thing up on the trailer and putting up pictures of it. Someone that is important from Custom Rama saw the Martinez interior, which is a special interior that this upholsterer uh, put all kinds of pleats and rolls and all sorts of things in this interior. All the interior is still in that car. I mean, this car was candy pink. It was absolutely brand new when Larry Watson was customizing it in '57, and it changed hands and got lost. And here is this car that somebody goes, wait a second, I see the headliner of this car, and that's the only thing I could figure out that worked to put this car in the hands of Larry Watson, because the front bumper had been changed, the lower valance had been changed, some other things had been changed, and not much of the car stood out that you would walk up to and go, hey, this is Larry Watson's car. These kids absolutely tripped over this gold mine of a car just by searching Marketplace. And they haven't sold it. They have plans on restoring it. I spoke with Ethan briefly, and the car ended up on the East Coast somewhere. And I was trying to get him to get it to Custom Car Revival this year, and he said that he didn't have time, so maybe next year. But hopefully the car resurfaces, and hopefully they get enough time and energy to restore it.
So and it's amazing that these cars are popping up. And, like for people who don't know who Larry Watson is, he is synonymous for these elaborate multi-layer candy and trim and everything. Paint was his key. And like if you go down through and do a search for Larry Watson, look for some of his painted projects, and my soul, like you could just spend days scrolling through and seeing some of this stuff. And again, a lot of you are going to look at it and say, yeah, that's okay. A lot of work went into that, but it ain't my taste. But one of the things that came out of the Larry Watson era was painting with lace.
He is the godfather of that.
He is the godfather of laying out his wife's lace tablecloth on the roof of a car, because those things are very intricately detailed, very, very fine thread. He laid it out on a roof of a car and with a base coat color,
Mhm.
sprayed a contrasting color, masking the image of that doily or of that lace into the paint. And then you clear coat over it, and
Mhm.
it looks like it's all been hand painted as part of the roof. And like, so you see these today. People still do this today. It's a very West Coast style of painting.
It's the dawn of the lowrider scene.
On of a yeah.
Was
So
that original panel painted car was a purple 64 Pontiac,
yeah,
and
and
it had lace on it, and everybody said, "What the hell is that?"
and if you really want to see how far lace painting has come, um, look up daily driven death traps on YouTube. These are a couple of young fellas. They recently did this. I believe it was an old Chevy,
Mhm.
52 Chevy that they look, we can custom paint in a barn for a couple $100. That's exactly what they did with that. Where do these young 20 somethings get these ideas? Because this stuff is passed down from generation to generation to generation. And it's something that we talk about here all the time on the Get Out and Drive podcast is if we're not sharing these stories, if we're not sharing the skills of what it takes to keep the automotive customization, building the trade going, it will disappear. Those who have been longtime listeners to Get Out and Drive podcast um, probably had one of the most, I'm going to say infamous, John, episodes that we did just not that long ago talking about EVs. It's the same thing. If we don't pass along some of the information that we have to the younger generation, it's never going to get passed on.
Right. That's exactly right. And that's where the term passing the torch, it's physically teaching someone else how to do it. And there has been a lot of custom greats through the years that have passed the torch physically, and you can see them on social media. They're in their 80s or 90s, and they have somebody who's 20, 30, 40 years old, and they're teaching them how to do lead work. They're teaching them how to do chops and all sorts of things. And you can read a book, and you can look at Barris custom techniques, volume 1, 2, 3, and the coffee table books. You can look at those all day long, but it doesn't give you the step by step, hands-on experience.
Yeah. And that's what it's all about is it's about learning new things. Uh, I think when I say the name Chad Hiltz, there's a 50-50 response that I get from people. You either love him or you hate him. If you don't know who Chad Hiltz is, bad Chad. So he does a
I'm
lot
not
of
a fan. I'm going to jump out right in front of you and say
short.
I'm not a fan.
So, well, not a fan of him, maybe not a fan of what of his creations, but it's the same token of looking at a Barris custom or
Hmm.
at a Larry Watson custom. It's certainly not for everybody,
Hmm.
but I look at Chad Hiltz and I say, here's a guy who's got something in his mind that wants to make it different from everybody else, and he wants to show you how he does it. And he does that on his YouTube channel, showing you how he does it on the cheap and on the down low. Is it for everybody? No. But I give kudos to him for doing what he does and showing people what he does, because there's not a lot of that out there.
Hmm. Hmm.
Fitzy's Fabrication is another one on YouTube. Look these guys up that kind of go in and show you. It might not be the right way, but it's a way, and it's custom, and it's different. So, and that's kind of what we're talking about in this episode is we started off with George Barris. We're talking about Larry Watson. We're bringing up a lot of these old school names who have been around for literally almost 100 years. George Barris, what was he? I think what was he born in like 1925,
I think it was somewhere near there.
right? And he died what 10 years ago?
Give or take, yes.
Yeah. So I mean, but that name will live on. And as we move, who are these future movers and shakers in the industry, John, you probably know better than I do. You follow a little bit more than I do. But who are the modern day um, George Barris's and Larry Watsons that are moving up, who aren't just cookie
That's
cutting.
not a word, but you customize the
I
word.
customized it, cookie cutting custom
Hmm.
quote unquote cars
Hmm.
for the masses. Like
Hmm.
who are some of these names that we should be talking about today that are rising up?
Quickly, that came to my mind. Someone has been doing it for a really long time. Is Voodoo Larry? His work and vision may not be everyone's cup of tea, but he's doing a lot of things that other people are not. I met Gino Walker last year, and he's from Oklahoma. Larry's from Illinois, up near Chicago area. But I met Gino when I was helping do customizing and shop work for the Dream delivery, the Dream truck, I guess, tribute sedan delivery. I met Gino in Springfield, Missouri last year, and he has chop classes. He cuts things with a torch, hammer and dolly, and smashing things and cutting it, and just taking his thumb like a carpenter and goes, "Hmm, does it work? Yeah. Does the tape measure match? Probably not." But we had a long talk about that. He said, "Step back, take a look. Does this going to work?" And I had a small hand in it, and um, they chopped and sectioned, pancaked the hood on I think it's a 50 or 51 Chevrolet truck, sedan delivery in 3 days inside at a car show. It
Yeah.
was amazing. And I had never met Gino before, and I came up, said who I am, and connection with the Dream Truck and Kurt McCormick, and back to Velvet Rope. He's like, "Come on in, hand me a saw."
And if we're talking about car shows and jobs done in 3 days, I think that we would be remiss if we didn't talk about Gene Winfield.
Yes, oh, very much so. He
I
just had
had
a birthday.
Yeah, just last week I had the pleasure of meeting Gene at the Atlantic Nationals in Moncton, New Brunswick several years ago. It wasn't it was very, very quick. Obviously, he's certainly busy and has a lot of people wanting to stop and talk to him, but I did get to shake his hand. And like that, they had a car. I forget what the car was. It was a 50s something or other that him and another fellow and a group of guys were chopping the roof on this thing, and they wanted to show people that, you know what, with a little bit of hard work and some determination, this is something that you and a couple of buddies, if you know what you're doing, can do in a weekend. And that's what they did. They started on a Thursday evening. They went Friday, they went Saturday. When the show ended on Sunday at noontime, they had this roof tacked into place on this car. So, like, there's the we can go. Let's talk a little bit modern mainstream. And again, John, I know you're probably not going to like this, but the names that come to mind based on TV and reality
Mhm.
are Chip Foose, Troy
Mhm.
Trepanier,
Mhm.
uh, the Ring brothers,
Yep.
a lot of these guys who are what I classify as, regardless of what you think of them, they're modern customizing uh, geniuses in the fact that some of these guys, like the Chip Fooses, like the um, uh, Dave Kendig,
Mhm.
Troy Trepanier, all these guys who have been in TV, who have got their name and their skill out there. Have they been celebritized a little bit because of it? Sure.
Mhm.
But the fact that their skills get shown is a little bit of the same tactic as what Sam Barris and George Barris did 60 years ago
Oh yeah.
when there was no such thing as reality TV.
Right.
They were just doing it in their shop and sending it out to the world.
Right. I mean,
Right.
there's different people that you can stop in the custom car scene and put a point in time and see things just emerge from that.
Yep.
Boyd Coddington single-handedly started the Billet era,
Yeah.
1978. He's driving a completely smooth red car with no chrome on it to Street Rod Nationals in Louisville. When every car had wire wheels and they were gold and brown fenders and all that jazz,
Yep.
he's driving
Something new.
something brand new, something nobody's ever seen before.
Yep.
And it's just amazing that certain people just some like it, some hate it, but you can just you can get a point in time and see where things emerged. I mean, Boyd Coddington had his own TV show for quite some time,
Yep.
and
Yeah,
he was right up there at the dawn of it.
and there's a lot of names. Of course, I'm going to put myself on the spot because I can't name the names, but there's a lot of names that came out of Boyd Coddington's shop, Chip Fuchs being one of them,
Oh,
that,
most certainly.
that have gone on to be and to do great things in the automotive industry,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be wheels related, whether it be fabrication related, whether it be paint. There's a lot of things that come out of the Boyd Coddington era. It's a shame that we lost Boyd early in his life and his career, but his legacy lives on. That industry, that business still lives on today as part of the as part of a stamp on car customizing.
His son is still building wheels in Kansas
Yep.
City.
Yep,
Mhm.
and they industrialized their customization so that everybody could have an opportunity to take part in what his dream was, and that is having Coddington wheels on your hot rod.
Sure.
But it also moved into steering wheels and plates and trim and all this different stuff. And when you look at street rods that were built coming up through, of course, street rod, that term doesn't even exist today, but street rods being built in the early to mid 80s into the 90s, what was one thing that they all had in common?
Easter egg colors and smooth,
Yep.
monotone,
Yep.
no chrome.
No. And what shine they may have had was billet.
Correct.
Right?
And
Billet
that spilled
badges.
over. I know we're skipping all over the place, but it's kind of fun.
It is.
That spilled over at Pro Street
Yep.
a whole lot. Another, again, we're jumping around here, and please try and stay on track, but I can't. My brain is all over the joint. Jim Jacobs, Pete Shaporis, 1973. Our Coops for Chickens. It's right there on my wall. It's right somewhere. I don't know. It's right there on my wall. The cover of Rod and Custom magazine. It's absolutely amazing how there was drag racing and muscle cars and all sorts of things, and people weren't paying attention to vintage street rods. And again, they drove to the very first Street Rod Nationals with Jim's coupe. Screaming yellow zonker is what they considered it. Yellow 34 Ford coupe with orange wheels on it, hellacious rake, dirt track tires, wire wheels, and the California Kid, Peach Forrest's car. And that today, the name, you say to people, oh, Pete and Jake's. People know what that is, but a lot of people don't know the history and the point in time where those guys said, I want to do something different. And that name is still applies today to their little shop in Kansas City, in around Kansas City. They still sell parts today, and it's a shame that we've lost one of them, but their name and things still lives on, and that cover of that Rod and Custom magazine, that's what launched me into my career of what I'm doing. As a kid, I saw that magazine and I looked through it and I'm like, holy cow, these guys are chopping the 34 Ford in the back of their house outside of their garage, tiny little garage with a hacksaw and a torch. I can do that. And I said, this is what's going to make me go. And that's my turning point. So thank you, Jim Jacobs and Pete Shaporis for making my life hell.
Well, guys, like we said earlier, we've been jumping all over the place with this show. But one thing that it proves of us jumping all over is our passion for what happens in the industry. I can certainly attest to John's knowledge of not just the industry of car building, car restoration, the people involved in that industry, but the amount of knowledge, useless knowledge that John has that pops out, and some of these names that he can remember and just spew off by times. That again, this is the knowledge that we need to continue to share with everybody. And not just the younger generations, because there's a lot of guys out there like me. John and I are only a few years apart, but John, his knowledge of the industry far exceeds mine, because I'm just a casual enthusiast. But John was in the industry for several years. And I think that, it might even be a future episode, John, to talk about the different styles of customizing cars, whether it be a pro street, whether it be a low rider, whether it be, we talked about street rods, that term's not even used anymore, and what that stuff means. So, that might be an episode. If you guys think that you want to hear us talk a little bit about, the different classifications of hot rodding and customizing over the years, make sure that you let us know. If you're watching this on YouTube, put it down in the comments. If you are listening to it on any other device, head over to our website and scroll down to the very bottom. There is a listener hotline. You can tell us who you are, where you're from, or not, but at least tell us your idea. If you want to hear us talk about something more specific, we can jump on board with that, and we can make an episode to appease those masses. John, I had a blast talking and bringing back some of this old school customization, the George Barris's, the Gene Winfields, Larry Watsons, all this stuff. And I think if there's anything that we can say is the passion is there. And we just want to share our passion with our listeners. So if you've got any final words, John, let it rip and see if
I don't. My brain is all over the place thinking about things. And the only thing I can possibly end with is I wish he lived closer to me, is Ryan Timmons. He's great friends with Gina Walker, and they're the two guys that I met down at Springfield, Missouri, at the Custom Car Show down there, Chop Cream Delivery, which is very close to being finished. Ryan is the only guy that I know that had the balls to chop this ugly ass green station wagon, put purple flames on it, and somehow it looks cool. So what an ugly ass car, but it sure is bitching. So I'm just going to close with that, because I would go on and talk about custom cars forever, and unless we want to have like a 3-hour show, you have to shut me up at some time.
We'll run out of tape.
Yes, we'll run out of tape. If anybody wants to hear something else about custom cars, man, let us know. Look, I know everyone wants to get out and drive, but it's been difficult with the price of gas lately. But Get Out and Drive doesn't have to mean physically driving your ride.
Get Out and Drive means sharing your auto repair skills with the next generation. # What drives youth?
Get Out and Drive means watching a classic road trip movie or something with a cool chase scene.
Get Out and Drive means hosting a car show or a cruise.
Get Out and Drive means working on that project car to get it ready to get out and drive.
Get Out and Drive means get those toy cars, Hot Wheels, remote control cars, and die casts and burn up the pavement.
Get Out and Drive means supporting organizations that help keep the automotive industry and hobby alive.
What does Get Out and Drive mean to you?
Let us know by leaving a message on our listener hotline. Just go to GetOutNDrive.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click the listener hotline button.
Cruise on over to our website, GetOutNDrive.com, for all the info you never wanted to know about our podcast. Hit us up on our listener hotline, be the first to know what's happening, get industry news, and grab your Get Out and Drive merch. Connect with us on social media. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Follow us on Twitter at GetOutNDrivePod.
What drives you?